Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Cropper here. Time for a history quiz. I'm going to be going through the prominent dates of major events and wars in America's history. Perhaps this will be followed by some quizzes on ancient history, or different time periods of history, or different personalities and stuff. But this is the opening quiz. Pretty easy, I should think. You should be able to know most of the stuff that I go over here. There will be a few surprises, which is the reason we're doing it. When was the Declaration of Independence signed? Everybody knows this one, right? It's July 4th, 1776. Written, of course, over a period of about a week before that, maybe 3 to 4 days before that, by Jefferson. There was a committee of 5 elected to write the Declaration, and they narrowed it down to Ben Franklin, John Adams, and Jefferson. And Franklin and Adams both said Jefferson should do it. So Jefferson did it. Declaration of Independence written in the week before July 4th, but signed by Continental Congress. Now, the Revolutionary War, oddly enough, started before we declared independence. So it's a bit fuzzy there. The Revolutionary War started on April 19th, 1775, and ended on September 3rd, 1783, although we had in effect won the war in 1781 in a decisive battle. But I quote from Encyclopedia Britannica, the Revolutionary War raged on through the 1770s, and on October 19, 1781, the Americans won decisive victory at the Battle of Yorktown in Virginia. The main part of the British Army surrendered there, and the Americans had in effect won the war. 2 years of peace negotiations and occasional fighting followed. Finally, September 3rd, 1783, the Americans and British signed the Treaty of Paris of 1783, officially ending the Revolutionary War. Good enough on that. We'll go to the next war in America's history now, the War of 1812. When did that take place? Well, of course, 1812. There was a particular thing that happened in the War of 1812, though, as you may know. Americans never fight on their own soil. Like the Japanese hit us at Pearl Harbor and Osama got us in New York City. And the Revolutionary War itself was on our own soil, Civil War. But we always go overseas for our fights, by and large. We were actually invaded, and not just a city, but our Capitol building was taken. The capital city and many of the buildings were destroyed in the War of 1812, and that happened in what year? Well, neither side gained much advantage early in the war, but on August 24th, 1814, the British troops captured Washington, D.C. and burned the Capitol and other government buildings. In 1814, the War of 1812, the heavy and hot action happened in 1814. Now then, the next war we shall talk about. Do you know the year that the Civil War started and the year that it ended? The Civil War, quote, took more American lives than any other war in history. It divided the people of the United States so that in many families brother fought against brother. The Civil War started April 12th, 1861, when Southern artillery shelled Fort Sumter in the harbor of Charleston, South Carolina. It ended 4 years later, almost to the day, on April 9th, 1865. The casualties in this war are amazing. In terms of human casualties, the Civil War cost more than any other American war. About 1 million men were killed or wounded. Casualties, about 1 million. Deaths, including those from disease, totaled 529,000. By comparison, 116,000 Americans died in World War I and 405,000 in World War II. The North lost 364,511 men. The South lost 164,800. Disease killed more men than bullets did. About 140,000 Union men and 75,000 Confederates died in battle. Disease killed more men than bullets. That was true up until World War I. I think I may have heard that the Crimean War, 1905, was bloodier, or 1898 or whenever it was bloodier, because they had used technology from the American Civil War. I think more men were killed there by violence than disease, but it may have been World War I. So that's it for the Civil War. Now the Civil War interrupted a project which was completed, resumed, and then completed 4 years after the end of the Civil War. What project was that? It was completed at Promontory Point, Utah. And that was the first transcontinental railroad in the United States. A catastrophe, an economic catastrophe, but a big accomplishment nonetheless. And once the nation was linked from side to side, it was linked. And then after that, several more transcontinental railroads were built, 3 altogether with government funding, and 1 was built privately. And the businessman James Jerome Hill even bragged he did not accept any government money, grants or funds. All 3 of the government railroads went bankrupt. James Jerome Hill's did not. And he built it up in the northern, up by the Canadian border, in the northern stretches of America, where everybody says there's not enough population, it's too rugged, you can never make a railroad work there. If they can make it work anywhere, that's the place you can't make a railroad work, especially without government funding. Well, he showed it's the only one that worked. Every other one went bankrupt. It shows you what government involvement does for you. Now, what year did the first Transcontinental Railroad get finished? Okay. If you know this, you may also know, and if you don't know this, perhaps you do know, that exactly 1 century later, not to the day but to the year, a century later, we accomplished what was perhaps our Transcontinental Railroad of the 1900s. We landed a man on the moon. What year did we land a man on the moon? Because a century earlier, we finished our Transcontinental Railroad. A century to the year. So it was 1869 and 1969. Because you remember Kennedy said before this decade is out, he said it in 61. And they did it before the decade was out, just barely. Now let's go on to World War I. And what year did World War I start? Well, I quote from Encyclopedia Britannica. As a result of the death of Franz Ferdinand, Austria-Hungary declared war on Serbia on July 28, 1949. 1914. July 28, 1914. By October 30th, the Central Powers, Austria-Hungary, Germany, and the Ottoman Empire, were at war with the Allies, Belgium, France, Great Britain, Russia, and Serbia. Other countries later joined in the fighting. So, by 1914, there were a lot of countries involved. What year did the United States of America get involved? We came into the First World War in 1917. April 6, 1917, we declare war on Germany. June 26, troops begin landing in France. And the war ends just a little over a year later, in 1918. You may know, the 11th hour, the 11th day of the 11th month. November 11th. Alright, so I'm going to give you the military casualties in the war. On the Allies side, we're going to give you 5 nations. First 4 nations, Britain, France, Italy, and Russia, in that order. Okay? Britain, 2,300,000 casualties. France, 5 million. Italy, 2,200,000. Russia, 9 million. Okay? And let's throw the United States in. We've got 4 major powers, and the 5th is the United States with 320,000. So the 5 big fighters in the First World War, every other big one lost well over 2 million men. As many as 10 million almost in Russia's case. And America lost 321,000. Serbia lost 330,000. Belgium lost 125,000.